Examinations. We had been seeing about examinations. We have seen examinations are a must because they have two sides. One is called trial, another is called temptations. Both are grouped under one word called examination. Now, trial is good. It helps me to assess myself where I stand in comparison to others, one, or in comparison to God's expectation of me. Where do I stand? So the trial of my faith is necessary, whether I walk by faith. When I see the history of Israel, God showed them 10 miracles in the land of Egypt. He punished the Egyptians because they had enslaved the Israelis for 430 long years. And so they ill-treated them to the extent that the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, he told his people that if the Israeli woman gives birth to a son, kill him. And Israelis could do nothing about it. Any Egyptian could come and kill the boys. So many Israeli women, they used to take their newborn baby boy and put him in the Nile River, which was infested with crocodiles. And so they became the fodders of crocodiles. To the extent Israelis were treated so evil. And God saw that. And this is what the Bible says. God said to Moses, I have seen the pains of my people. Now I have come down to deliver them. And he said to Moses, I want you to go and deliver them. Now Moses was a man who was one of those male child who was put in the Nile River. And this basket which contained Moses, when the sister of Pharaoh came to take bath in the river, and she heard a child's cry, and she said to one of her maidservants, go and see what is this happening? Why is the child crying? And she brought the basket. And Moses was a very beautiful child. When this lady saw him, she said, I will adopt this boy as my own son. And Moses' sister was watching from a distance. And she ran and said, Ma'am, Your Excellency, can I get you a woman who can feed him? Because that time they didn't have powder milk to feed the child. So she said, yes, all right. And she went and called her mother. And mother fed Moses for a few years. And in that little time of 1 or 2 years, Moses began to understand that he was a Jewish boy. Now we don't know how this kind of understanding comes to the children. It has happened, children who have been adopted by some parents, after some years, those children, they become very disturbed in their psyche, in their thinking, and they begin to think, I am not their child. Some psyche begins to grow in them, and they begin to think that I am not their child. Though he would have or she would have received great love from the parents who adopted her. But something happens. I really don't know if the psychologists would know, Mrs. Matthew and others, or Mr. David, what happens, what kind of knowledge the child has from birth. And so Moses, when he grew up in the palace of Pharaoh, he knew that he was not an Egyptian. He was an Israeli. But his mother, who was an Egyptian, she loved him very much. And He was trained as a military general of Egypt, and he was a very intelligent boy. Jews are generally very intelligent. I told you once that I will put up on the board, and I did put up. You will see how many Jews have received Nobel Prizes, what inventions and discoveries they have made that has made our lives comfortable. And so Jews basically are very intelligent people. I would like you to read how the nation of Israel was born on 14th May 1948. You should read that book called Exodus, Exodus, Exodus by Leon Uris. You will be surprised to know how those handful of Jews, on the very day of their coming into existence, 14th May 1948, they were attacked by 7 mighty armies. And these were not even a government so far. They didn't even have the defined borders. Forget about their having defense services, an army and air force. Forget about their having trained police. Forget about their having any organized government. On the day the vote was cast in UNO, it was the day that they were attacked by 7 armies. And can you imagine, after a few days, those 7 armies' presidents, they bowed down, they said, please save us from the beatings by Israelis. You should read that book, and then you will come to know it's only the hand of God that gave them victory. I read a bit of it. In the Second World War, they found 4 broken aeroplanes in Sinai Desert. They went there, brought those broken aircraft, and they took out some pieces from here and there and made 2 aircraft serviceable. Whereas the 7 armies that had surrounded them had more than 500 aircraft. And with 2 aircraft, they grounded those 500 aircraft. It's amazing. It's nothing but miracle. They are very ingenious and intelligent people because they're the people of God. God chose them from the beginning, from the times of Abraham. So God endued them with wisdom. Even now you can see Israel, its total area is less than Kerala. And can you imagine if we all, North Indians and East Indians, West Indians, surround Kerala? I think Kerala won't survive more than 5 days. That's the smallness of the nation. But the 11 enemies who surround Israelis, they are afraid of them. They are afraid of them. Such a small nation. And yet they are afraid. If the mothers have to say, oh, to their child, if you don't stop crying, Israel will come. Israel has become a frightened phrase even for the children, because God is with them. And so we are talking about the strength when we have the trial. When children of Israel saw 10 miracles of God, how God punished Egyptians. Now can you imagine that a mighty nation of Israel being delivered from the slavery of Egypt by just a rod? God said to Moses, take this rod, I'll be with you. And when Pharaoh comes, says, you let my people go. If he refuses, then you say, all your water of Nile River will become blood. And that's exactly what happened. The Nile River water, the water of all the springs, water in their pots became blood. Then Pharaoh said, please get this curse removed. Moses said, if you permit us to go, we will do that. Yes, I will think over it, but first of all, let my people live. He didn't let them go. Then Moses met him second time and said, Your Excellency Pharaoh, you didn't let us go in the first instance, but today I am telling you, if you don't let us go, frogs will cover whole of Egypt. And he didn't know how this babbler was speaking. Frogs will come. How many frogs are there in Egypt or Egyptian river? He didn't believe it. And God said, all right, point your rod towards Egypt. And he pointed, and millions of frogs came on Egypt. Now this is recorded in Egyptian history, not just merely Bible, because Bible is historically correct. Whether it is the history of Europe or the history of Asia or the history of particularly Egypt. So now the frogs were in their pockets, frogs were there on their shoulders, and frogs were there on heads, and they were very troubled. Can you imagine a time when frogs are all around you? I have seen people, when the frogs come, they jump more than frogs. Pharaoh said, please remove the frogs. Moses said, all right, if you will let my people go. He said, I'll think over it. Then he did not allow them to go. He said, all right, tomorrow you will see what punishment God will give you. And so he went in front of Pharaoh and took the dust of Egypt and just put it in the air, and it became a lice. So the girls have lice in their hair and the boys have lice in their hair, and they not only hair alone but all over the body. Can you imagine your body suffering with lice? How many of you girls have lice in your hair? Boys, now we are of course urban area people, but you go to some of the villages, you will find lice. They keep on scratching their head. Lice create life miserable. And so the lice were all over Egypt. And it was a scratching nation, scratching all the time. And so he called Moses and said, Moses, please get the lice removed, because these Egyptian wizards, they were trying to do the same, but the wizards also got lice. And so they said, this is the hand of God, we can't do it. Moses said, let the people of Israel go. He said, all right. But when the lice were removed, he did not allow them to go. Moses said, all right, now you will have all over you the flies. So the swarms of flies came. I don't know how you would like flies going into your nostrils, flies going into your ears. The flies came, and like this, God punished the Egyptians. The last punishment, before that, the last, God said through Moses, Pharaoh, if you don't allow my people to go, you will have 3 days of thick darkness, no day or night, but 3 days of thick darkness. Darkness that can be touched. Can you imagine such a darkness that you can touch it? To you and me, it seems to be an unusual phenomena of light and darkness. Light we have been able to define that it is a movement of photons. There are small particles which are called photons. So the light is formed by photons, and their speed of movement